times, so her work is not always easy. She stands for many hours every day, and by evening, her feet hurt badly. Still, Nadia likes meeting different people, and she enjoys helping someone find exactly what they need. She finishes work at 6, but on weekends she stays later because the store becomes much busier. When she gets home, she is usually tired, but she still helps her mother prepare dinner. At night, she likes to sit by the window with a cup of tea and think quietly about her day. Her life is not easy, but she feels proud because she works hard and helps her family every day. A teacher in a small village. Mr. Karim is a school teacher in a small village near the mountains. He has worked there for more than 15 years, and everyone in the village knows him well. He teaches English, history, and sometimes even mathematics when another teacher is absent. His school is not very large, and the classrooms are simple, but he loves his job deeply. Every morning, he walks to school with a bag full of books and papers. On his way, he often meets children running along the road or farmers working in the fields. When he enters the classroom, the students stand up and greet him with smiling faces. He is strict when he teaches, but he is also kind and patient. He believes that children learn best when they are not afraid to ask questions. Sometimes the school has problems. In winter, the rooms are very cold, and in summer, there is often no electricity for the fans. Even so, Mr. Karim never misses a day unless he is very sick. After school, he usually stays for another hour to help weak students with reading and writing. He says that teaching is not only a job. For him, it is a way to build a better future. He does not earn a lot of money, but he feels rich when he sees his students grow into confident young people. Late for the train. Sana had a difficult morning because everything seemed to go wrong from the moment she woke up. Her alarm clock did not ring, so she opened her eyes much later than usual. She jumped out of bed, looked at the time, and immediately felt nervous. She had an important meeting in another city, and if she missed the train, the whole day would become a disaster. She got dressed very quickly and did not even have time to brush her hair properly. In the kitchen, she poured tea into a cup, but it was too hot, so she left it on the table and rushed outside without drinking it. On the way to the station, traffic was terrible. Cars were moving slowly, and the driver of her taxi kept looking at the road with an unhappy face. Sana checked her watch again and again. Her hands were cold, and her stomach felt tight with worry. When she finally arrived at the station, she paid the driver quickly and ran toward the platform with her bag in her hand. She could hear the train, and for one terrible second, she thought she was too late. But then she saw that people were still getting on. She climbed into the train just before the doors closed. She sat down, took a deep breath, and smiled to herself. Her day had started badly, but at least she had not missed the train. My grandmother's garden. My grandmother has a beautiful garden behind her house, and it is one of my favorite places in the world. The garden is not very large, but it feels peaceful and full of life. There are red roses, yellow flowers, green vegetables, and a small lemon tree near the wall. Every morning, my grandmother goes outside with a little metal can and waters the plants carefully. She speaks to them softly, as if they are her old friends. When I was younger, I did not understand why she loved the garden so much. To me, it was just soil, leaves, and insects. But as I grew older, I started to see it differently. The garden changes with the seasons, and each change is beautiful in its own way. In spring, everything looks fresh and bright. In summer, the flowers are full and colorful. Even in winter, when the air is cold and many plants rest quietly, the garden still feels special. My grandmother says that a garden teaches patience because nothing grows in a single day. You must water it, protect it, and wait. Sometimes I sit with her in the evening while she pulls small weeds from the ground. We do not always talk much, but the silence is warm and comfortable. That garden is not only full of plants, it is full of memories, peace, and love. A nurse on the night shift. Farah works as a nurse in a large hospital, and her schedule is very different from the schedules of most people. She works at night, usually from 11 o'clock in the evening until 7 in the morning. While many people are sleeping, she is walking through bright hospital halls, checking patients, giving medicine, and speaking to doctors. At first, this kind of work was very difficult for her. Her body wanted to sleep at night and wake up in the morning like everyone else. But over time, she became used to it. Now she sleeps during the day and works at night without too much trouble. Her job is not easy because sick people need care at all hours. Some patients are in pain, some feel afraid, and some cannot sleep because they are worried about their health. Farah tries to speak gently to everyone. She knows that a calm voice can help a patient feel safer. Sometimes the hospital becomes very busy, especially when there is an emergency. On those nights, she hardly has time to sit down. Even when she is tired, she keeps moving because people depend on her. When her shift ends in the morning, she often steps outside and sees the sun rising over the city. At that moment, she feels both tired and proud. Her work is hard, but it matters, and that gives her strength. A quiet cafe in London. There is a small cafe on a quiet street in London where Emma likes to spend her afternoons. It is not a famous place, and many people walk past it without noticing, but for her, it feels like a second home. The cafe has wooden tables, soft music, and a warm smell of fresh coffee. Every day after work, Emma walks there slowly, carrying a book in her bag. She always chooses the same seat near the window, where she can watch people passing by. Sometimes she orders tea, and sometimes she chooses a cup of strong coffee with a slice of cake. She does not always read her book. Often, she just sits and thinks about her day. She watches people talking, laughing, or walking quickly with busy faces. The cafe owner knows her well now and greets her with a friendly smile every time she enters. On rainy days, the sound of water on the window makes the place feel even more peaceful. Emma says that this small cafe helps her relax and forget her stress. It is not just a place to drink coffee, it is a place where she can breathe, think, and feel calm again before returning to her busy life. A day at the airport. James arrived at Heathrow Airport early in the morning because he did not want to be late for his flight. The airport was already full of people, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. Some were checking their tickets, some were carrying heavy bags, and others were looking at the departure screens with worried faces. James stood in line to check in his luggage, and while he waited, he looked around and observed everything carefully. He saw families saying goodbye, business travelers speaking on their phones, and children running excitedly with their small backpacks. After checking in, he walked through security, where he had to take off his jacket and place his belongings in a tray. It took some time, but everything went smoothly. When he reached the waiting area, he finally relaxed. He bought a cup of coffee and sat near the gate, watching airplanes outside the large glass windows. Each plane was coming and going like a moving story. When his flight was announced, he stood up, took a deep breath, and joined the line. Traveling always made him feel a little nervous, but also excited. It was a new journey, a new place, and a new experience waiting for him. A rainy evening. It was a cold and rainy evening in London, and the streets were shining under the soft yellow lights. People were walking quickly, holding umbrellas and trying to stay dry. Sarah was standing at a bus stop, waiting for her bus after a long day at work. Her shoes were wet, and her hands felt cold, but she did not feel unhappy. There was something peaceful about the rain. She watched the drops falling slowly and listened to the sound they made on the road. Cars passed by, sending small waves of water to the sides, and the air smelled fresh and clean. A man next to her was reading a newspaper, and a woman was speaking quietly on her phone. No one was in a hurry to talk. Everyone was in their own world. When the bus finally arrived, Sarah stepped inside and sat near the window. She looked outside as the city moved slowly around her. The lights, the rain, and the quiet feeling made her calm. Sometimes, a simple moment like this can feel very special. It was not an exciting day, but it was real, and it was enough. A bookshop near the river. Near the River Thames, there is a small bookshop that Daniel visits almost every weekend. The shop is old, with wooden shelves and a soft smell of paper and ink. When he enters, he feels like he is stepping into another world. The shelves are full of books of every kind, from stories and history to science and travel. Daniel does not always come to buy something. Sometimes he just walks slowly between the shelves, reading titles and opening random pages. The shop is quiet, and the only sound is the soft turning of pages. The owner of the shop is an older man who knows a lot about books. He often gives Daniel suggestions and tells him about new arrivals. Sometimes they talk for a few minutes about stories and writers. Outside, the river moves slowly, and people walk along the path, but inside the shop, time feels different. Daniel says that this place helps him relax and think more clearly. In a busy city, it is not easy to find a quiet place, but this bookshop gives him that peace. For him, it is more than just a shop. It is a place of comfort and discovery. A morning bus ride. Every morning, Olivia takes the bus to work, and this simple journey has become an important part of her day. She leaves her house at the same time every day and walks to the bus stop with a cup of coffee in her hand. The bus usually arrives on time, and she always sits by the window if the seat is free. During the ride, she watches the city slowly wake up. Shops begin to open, people walk quickly to their offices, and the streets become busy with traffic. Some passengers on the bus are quiet, looking at their phones or listening to music. Others talk softly with friends or read books. Olivia likes to observe these small details. Sometimes she thinks about her plans for the day, and sometimes she just enjoys the moment without thinking too much. The journey is not long, but it gives her time to prepare her mind. By the time she reaches her stop, she feels ready to start work. For Olivia, this daily bus ride is not just a way to travel. It is a small, peaceful space between home and work, where she can think, relax, and begin her day with a calm mind. A weekend at the park. On Saturday mornings, Michael likes to visit a large park in London to relax and enjoy some quiet time. The park is full of tall trees, green grass, and small walking paths that go in different directions. When he arrives, he usually finds a bench near a lake where ducks swim slowly in the water. Families come with children, couples walk hand in hand, and some people jog along the paths with headphones in their ears. Michael often brings a small notebook with him, but he does not always write. Sometimes he just watches the world around him. He notices the sound of birds, the movement of leaves in the wind, and the laughter of children playing nearby. The air feels fresh, and the city noise seems far away. After some time, he walks slowly around the park, taking deep breaths and enjoying the calm atmosphere. He believes that these simple moments help him feel balanced and peaceful. When he finally leaves the park, he feels lighter, as if all his stress has slowly disappeared. For him, This weekly visit is not just a habit. It is a way to take care of his mind. A student's study routine. Aisha is a university student in London, and her daily routine is carefully planned so she can manage her studies well. She wakes up early in the morning and starts her day with a simple breakfast. After that, she reviews her notes for about an hour before leaving for her classes. At the university, she attends lectures, listens carefully, and writes down important points in her notebook. She does not always understand everything immediately, but she makes sure to ask questions when something is not clear. After her classes, she usually goes to the library instead of going home. The library is quiet, and it helps her focus better. She spends several hours there reading books, completing assignments, and preparing for upcoming exams. Sometimes she feels tired, but she reminds herself why she started. She wants to build a good future, and she knows that hard work is necessary. In the evening, she returns home and takes a short break before studying again for a little while. She does not study all night because she knows rest is important too. Her routine is not easy, but it is effective. Step by step, she is moving closer to her goals. A small restaurant experience. Last evening, Daniel decided to visit a small restaurant near his office, a place he had passed many times but never entered before. The restaurant looked simple from the outside, but inside it felt warm and welcoming. Soft music was playing, and the smell of freshly cooked food filled the air. A waiter greeted him politely and showed him to a table near the corner. Daniel looked at the menu carefully because he wanted to try something new. After a few minutes, he ordered a hot meal and a glass of juice. While he waited, he watched other people enjoying their food and talking quietly. Some were with friends, and some were alone, like him. When his food arrived, he took his first bite and smiled. The taste was rich and satisfying, much better than he expected. He ate slowly, enjoying each moment without rushing. After finishing his meal, he sat for a few minutes and looked around again. The restaurant felt peaceful, and he was glad he had finally decided to enter. Sometimes, trying something new can bring a simple kind of happiness. A day without electricity. One evening, there was a sudden power cut in the area, and everything around became dark and quiet. At first, people felt confused because they were not prepared for it. Lights went out, television stopped, and phones began to lose battery. Emma was sitting in her living room when the lights suddenly disappeared. She looked around and waited, thinking the electricity would return quickly, but it did not. Instead of feeling annoyed, she decided to do something different. She lit a candle and placed it on the table. The soft light filled the room with a calm and peaceful feeling. She sat quietly and listened to the sounds around her. Without electricity, the world felt slower and more natural. She could hear distant voices, the wind outside, and even her own breathing. Later, her family joined her, and they started talking together. They shared stories, laughed, and enjoyed each other's company in a way they had not done for a long time. When the electricity finally returned, everything became bright again. But something felt different. Emma realized that sometimes, when the world stops for a moment, we can see what really matters. A visit to the library. Tom visits the public library in London every week, and it has become one of his favorite places in the city. The building is large and quiet, with rows of shelves filled with books on every subject. When he enters, he feels a sense of calm that he cannot find anywhere else. He walks slowly between the shelves, looking at different titles and choosing books that interest him. Sometimes he reads about history, and other times he chooses stories that take him to different worlds. He usually sits at a table near a window, where natural light makes reading comfortable. Around him, other people are also reading, writing, or studying quietly. No one speaks loudly, and everyone respects the peaceful environment. Tom likes this silence because it helps him think clearly. He often spends hours there without noticing the time passing. Before leaving, he selects one or two books to take home. The library is not just a place for reading. For Tom, it is a place where he can focus, learn, and relax at the same time. In a busy city, finding such a place is truly special. A visit to the museum. Last Sunday, Rebecca decided to visit a museum in London because she wanted to spend her day in a quiet and meaningful way. The building was large and beautiful, with high ceilings and wide halls that echoed softly when people walked. As she entered, she saw different sections filled with paintings, old objects, and historical displays. Each room told a different story from the past. Rebecca moved slowly, reading the information beside each piece and trying to imagine the lives of people from long ago. Some paintings were bright and full of color, while others were dark and serious. She stopped in front of one painting for a long time because it made her feel something she could not explain. Around her, people were walking quietly, speaking in low voices, and taking pictures. The museum felt calm and respectful, like a place where time moved more slowly. After a few hours, Rebecca sat on a bench and looked around, thinking about everything she had seen. She realized that the museum was not just a collection of objects. It was a place full of stories, emotions, and memories. When she left, she felt thoughtful and inspired. Waiting for a friend, David arrived at the cafe earlier than planned because he did not want to be late to meet his friend. He chose a table near the window and ordered a cup of tea while he waited. At first, he checked his phone again and again, looking at the time and reading old messages. Minutes passed slowly, and he began to feel a little impatient. He looked outside and watched people walking by, each one busy with their own life. Some were smiling, some looked tired, and others seemed lost in thought. After a while, he put his phone away and tried to relax. He took a sip of his tea and noticed its warm and comforting taste. The cafe was quiet, and soft music was playing in the background. Suddenly, the waiting did not feel so bad anymore. It became a moment of rest in his busy day. When his friend finally arrived, David smiled and stood up to greet him. He realized that sometimes waiting is not just about passing time. It can also be a chance to slow down and enjoy small, peaceful moments. A walk by the river. On a cool evening, Anna decided to take a walk along the River Thames after finishing her work. The sky was slowly turning darker, and the lights from the buildings reflected beautifully on the water. People were walking in both directions, some alone and some in groups, enjoying the fresh air. Anna walked at a slow pace, listening to the gentle sound of water moving against the edges of the river. She did not feel the need to rush. For once, she allowed herself to simply exist in the moment. She passed street performers playing music and small cafes where people sat outside, talking and laughing. The atmosphere felt calm and alive at the same time. As she continued walking, she started to think about her day, her plans, and her dreams. The movement of her steps made her thoughts clearer. By the time she reached the end of her walk, she felt relaxed and refreshed. Sometimes, a simple walk in a quiet place can bring peace that nothing else can offer. A morning at the market. Every Saturday morning, Oliver visits a local market near his home in London to buy fresh food for the week. The market is always full of color, noise, and activity. As he enters, he sees rows of stalls selling fruits, vegetables, bread, and flowers. The sellers call out to customers, offering their best products with friendly smiles. Oliver enjoys walking slowly through the market, taking his time to choose what he needs. He often stops to talk with the sellers, asking about the quality of the food or where it comes from. Some of them recognize him and greet him warmly. The smell of fresh bread and cooked food fills the air, making the place feel lively and welcoming. After buying fruits and vegetables, Oliver sometimes treats himself to a small snack from one of the food stalls. He finds a quiet corner to stand and eat while watching the busy scene around him. For him, the market is not just a place to shop, it is a place full of life, connection, and simple joy. A quiet evening at home. After a long and tiring day, Laura returned home and closed the door behind her with a deep breath. The silence inside her apartment felt comforting after the noise of the outside world. She placed her bag on the table and changed into comfortable clothes. Instead of turning on the television, she decided to enjoy a quiet evening. She made herself a cup of tea and sat near the window, looking at the city lights in the distance. The room was softly lit, and everything felt calm and peaceful. She thought about her day, the small problems she faced, and the things she had completed. There was no rush, no pressure, just a moment to rest. Later, she picked up a book and read a few pages slowly, without trying to hurry. Time passed gently, and she felt her body relax more and more. Before going to bed, she smiled quietly, feeling grateful for this simple moment. Sometimes, the best part of the day is not something big or exciting. It is the quiet time we give ourselves to rest and feel at peace. A late-night study session. It was already late at night, but Daniel was still sitting at his desk with a book open in front of him. The room was quiet, and the only sound was the soft turning of pages and the ticking of the clock on the wall. He had an important exam the next day, and although he felt tired, he knew he had to continue. He read each page carefully, underlining important points and writing small notes in the margins. Sometimes, his eyes became heavy, and he had to stop for a moment to stretch or drink water. Outside, the city had become silent, and most people were already asleep. This made it easier for him to focus. There were no distractions, no noise, and no interruptions. He liked this quiet time, even though it was difficult to stay awake. Around midnight, he took a short break and looked out of the window. The streetlights were still on, and a few cars passed slowly. He felt a mix of pressure and determination. Studying was not always enjoyable, but he understood its importance. After some time, he returned to his desk and continued reading. He knew that every small effort would help him do better the next day. A visit to the doctor. Emma had not been feeling well for a few days, so she decided to visit a doctor near her home in London. The clinic was clean and quiet, with a few people sitting in the waiting area. She checked in at the front desk and then sat down, holding her bag in her hand. While she waited, she looked around and noticed other patients reading magazines or looking at their phones. After some time, her name was called, and she followed the nurse into a small room. The doctor greeted her kindly and asked about her symptoms. Emma explained how she had been feeling, speaking slowly and clearly. The doctor listened carefully and asked a few more questions before checking her temperature and heartbeat. After the examination, the doctor smiled and told her that it was nothing serious, just a mild illness that would pass with rest and medicine. Emma felt relieved. She was given a prescription and simple advice to take care of herself. When she left the clinic, she felt lighter and less worried. Sometimes, understanding a problem is enough to make us feel better. A train journey through the countryside. On a bright morning, James boarded a train that would take him out of London and into the countryside. He found a seat near the window and placed his bag beside him. As the train began to move, the busy city slowly disappeared, and the view outside changed. Tall buildings became smaller, and soon they were replaced by open fields and green hills. James watched quietly as the scenery passed by. There were small houses, farms, and trees that stretched far into the distance. Occasionally, he saw animals grazing peacefully in the fields. The journey felt calm and relaxing, very different from the noise and speed of the city. Inside the train, passengers sat quietly, reading books or looking out of their windows. No one seemed to be in a hurry. James leaned back in his seat and allowed himself to enjoy the moment. Traveling by train gave him time to think and observe without stress. It reminded him that sometimes the journey itself can be as important as the destination. A conversation with a stranger. One afternoon, while sitting alone in a park in London, Olivia noticed a woman sitting on the bench next to her. At first, they did not speak. They both looked around quietly, enjoying the peaceful environment. After a few minutes, the woman smiled and said a simple hello. Olivia smiled back and responded politely. Slowly, they started talking. The conversation was not very deep, but it felt warm and natural. They spoke about the weather, the park, and their daily routines. The woman mentioned that she had recently moved to the city and was still getting used to everything. Olivia listened with interest and shared a little about her own experiences. The conversation lasted only a short time, but it left a positive feeling. When the woman stood up to leave, they said goodbye with friendly smiles. Olivia realized that sometimes, even a short conversation with a stranger can make a day feel brighter. It reminded her that connection does not always need to be long or complicated. Sometimes, a few kind words are enough. A Sunday morning at home. On Sunday mornings, Lucas enjoys staying at home and taking things slowly. Unlike weekdays, there is no alarm to wake him up early, and he can rest as much as he needs. When he finally gets out of bed, the house is quiet and calm. He walks to the kitchen and prepares a simple breakfast, usually toast, eggs, and a cup of tea. After eating, he sits in the living room and opens a book or sometimes just listens to soft music. There is no rush to go anywhere, and no pressure to complete tasks. The slow pace of the morning allows him to relax and think clearly. Sometimes, he cleans his room or organizes his things, but he does it without stress. Later in the day, he might call a friend or go for a short walk, but the morning always belongs to him. Lucas believes that these quiet Sundays are important because they help him recover from a busy week. They give him energy and peace before a new week begins. For him, a calm morning is one of life's simple but valuable pleasures. A rainy train platform. It was a gray and rainy afternoon when Daniel arrived at the train platform in London. The sky was heavy with clouds, and light rain was falling steadily onto the tracks. People stood under the roof, trying to stay dry, while others held umbrellas and looked down the line for their train. Daniel found a place near a pillar and placed his bag beside him. The platform was not noisy, but it was full of quiet movement. Some passengers checked their watches again and again, while others stared at their phones without speaking. The sound of rain hitting the metal roof created a soft rhythm that made the moment feel calm, even though everyone was waiting. A cold wind moved through the station, and Daniel pulled his jacket closer. He watched as a train slowly arrived on the opposite side, its doors opening and closing with a mechanical sound. People stepped in and out quickly, as if time was always chasing them. When his own train was announced, he stood up, picked up his bag, and joined the line. Waiting in the rain was not comfortable, but there was something peaceful about that moment. Something quiet and real. A visit to a friend's home. Last weekend, Olivia visited her friend Emily, who had recently moved into a new apartment in London. The building was modern and clean, with large windows that let in plenty of natural light. When Olivia entered, Emily greeted her with a warm smile and invited her inside. The apartment was small but beautifully arranged, with simple furniture and soft colors that made it feel comfortable. They sat in the living room and started talking about their week, sharing stories about work, small problems, and funny moments. Emily made tea, and they drank it slowly while continuing their conversation. The atmosphere was relaxed and there was no need to hurry. At one point, they stood near the window and looked out at the city below. Cars moved along the streets, and people walked quickly in different directions. Inside the apartment, everything felt calm and quiet. After spending a few hours together, Olivia realized how important these simple visits were. They were not doing anything special, but the time felt meaningful. When she left, she felt happy and refreshed. Sometimes, spending time with a good friend is all we need to feel better. A long day at work. Mark had one of those days when everything seemed to take longer than expected. He arrived at his office in London early in the morning, hoping to finish his tasks quickly, but things did not go as planned. Emails kept arriving, meetings took more time than expected, and small problems appeared one after another. He tried to stay focused, but the pressure slowly built up. By the afternoon, he felt tired and slightly frustrated. He took a short break and stood near the window, looking outside at the busy street below. People were moving quickly, just like he had been all day. That moment made him pause. He took a deep breath and returned to his desk with a calmer mind. Instead of rushing, he started working step by step, focusing on one task at a time. Slowly, things became more manageable. By the time he finished his work, it was already evening. He packed his bag and left the office with a quiet sense of relief. It had been a long and difficult day, but he had handled it. Sometimes, the day does not go the way we expect, but how we respond makes all the difference. A child in the playground. On a sunny afternoon, a young boy named Leo was playing in a playground near his home in London. The playground was full of children running, laughing, and enjoying their time. Leo climbed up a small structure and then slid down with excitement on his face. His energy seemed endless, and he moved from one activity to another without stopping. His mother sat on a nearby bench, watching him with a gentle smile. She called his name sometimes, reminding him to be careful, but she also allowed him to explore freely. Other children were playing games together, sharing toys, and making new friends quickly. The air was full of laughter and cheerful voices. Leo fell once while running, but he stood up immediately and continued playing, as if nothing had happened. For him, the moment was simple and joyful. He was not thinking about tomorrow or worrying about anything. He was just living in the present. Watching him, his mother felt a quiet happiness. Children have a natural way of enjoying life, and sometimes adults forget how simple happiness can be. A late evening walk. After finishing his dinner, Daniel decided to go for a short walk around his neighborhood in London. The streets were quiet, and most shops had already closed for the day. Street lights cast a soft glow on the road, and the air felt cool and fresh. As he walked slowly, he could hear distant sounds of traffic and the occasional footsteps of other people passing by. The night had a calm and peaceful feeling that was very different from the busy daytime. Daniel did not have any specific destination. He simply walked, allowing his thoughts to move freely. He thought about his day, the conversations he had, and the tasks he had completed. Some thoughts made him smile, while others made him reflect more deeply. Walking at night gave him space to think without distractions. After some time, he turned back and walked toward his home. When he finally reached his door, he felt more relaxed than before. Sometimes, a quiet walk at the end of the day is enough to clear the mind and bring a sense of peace. A morning in a bookstore. On a quiet morning in London, Clara stepped into a small bookstore near her office before starting her workday. The shop had just opened, and there were only a few people inside. The smell of books filled the air, creating a calm and welcoming atmosphere. Clara walked slowly between the shelves, touching the covers and reading the titles. She did not come to buy anything specific. She simply wanted to spend a few peaceful minutes before her busy day began. The owner of the shop greeted her with a polite nod, and she smiled in return. She picked up a book, read a few pages, and felt her mind relax. Outside, the city was waking up, but inside the bookstore, everything felt still and quiet. After some time, Clara chose a small book and went to the counter. It was not an important purchase, but it felt meaningful. When she left the shop, she felt ready to face the day with a calmer and clearer mind. A bus ride in the rain. It was raining heavily when Thomas got on the bus after work. His jacket was wet, and small drops of water fell from his hair as he took a seat near the window. The bus was warm inside, and the windows were slightly foggy. People sat quietly, tired from their day, each one lost in their own thoughts. Thomas looked outside as the bus moved slowly through the streets. Rain covered the glass, making the lights of cars and buildings look soft and blurred. The city felt different in the rain, calmer and more reflective. No one was speaking loudly, and even the driver seemed to move carefully through the traffic. Thomas leaned his head against the window and listened to the gentle sound of rain. It was a simple moment, but it helped him relax after a long day. When his stop arrived, he stood up, feeling more at ease than before. A visit to the supermarket. On a Saturday afternoon, Emma went to the supermarket to buy food for the week. The place was busy, with people pushing carts and moving quickly through the aisles. She picked up a basket and started walking slowly, checking her list. She moved from one section to another, choosing fresh vegetables, bread, and other items she needed. Sometimes she stopped to compare prices or read labels carefully. Around her, people were making decisions, talking with family members, or searching for products on the shelves. The supermarket was full of movement and quiet conversation. Emma did not rush. She took her time, making sure she had everything. When she finished, she went to the checkout line and waited patiently. After paying, she packed her items into her bag and left the store. It was a simple task, something she did every week, but it was also a small part of her routine that kept her life organized and steady. A short phone call. Late in the evening, Daniel received a phone call from an old friend he had not spoken to in a long time. At first, he was surprised to see the name on his screen, but he answered with a smile. The conversation started simply, with greetings and questions about how they were doing. Slowly, they began to talk more openly, sharing updates about their lives. They spoke about work, daily routines, and small changes that had happened over time. Even though the call was not very long, it felt meaningful. Hearing a familiar voice brought back memories and reminded Daniel of past moments they had shared. The connection felt natural, even after such a long gap. When the call ended, Daniel sat quietly for a moment, thinking about the conversation. Sometimes, a short call can remind us that distance does not always break connections. It only makes us appreciate them more. A quiet train journey. On a calm afternoon, Sarah boarded a train in London for a short journey across the city. She found a seat by the window and placed her bag beside her. The train was not crowded, and most passengers were sitting quietly. Some were reading, while others were looking outside or listening to music. As the train started moving, Sarah watched the view change from busy streets to quieter areas. Buildings passed by, and the rhythm of the train created a steady, calming sound. She did not use her phone. Instead, she allowed herself to simply observe and relax. The movement of the train gave her time to think without pressure. It was not a long journey, but it felt peaceful and refreshing. When her stop arrived, she stood up and stepped off the train, feeling calm and ready for whatever came next. An early morning run. Just before sunrise, Ethan left his apartment in London and started his usual morning run. The streets were quiet, and the air felt cool and fresh against his face. Most people were still asleep, and the city had a calm, peaceful energy that he did not see during the day. As he ran, he listened to the steady sound of his footsteps and his breathing. The sky slowly changed color, from dark blue to soft orange, and the first light of the day appeared. He passed empty streets, closed shops, and a few early workers starting their day. Running was not always easy for him, especially in the beginning, but now it had become a habit he truly enjoyed. It gave him time to think, to clear his mind, and to feel strong. When he finally slowed down and stopped, he felt tired but satisfied. The day had just begun, and already he felt ready to face it. A visit to a coffee shop. On a cold afternoon, Lily walked into a small coffee shop to escape the weather outside. The door closed behind her, and she immediately felt the warmth inside. The smell of fresh coffee and baked bread filled the air, making the place feel welcoming. She walked to the counter, ordered a hot drink, and waited quietly while the barista prepared it. When she received her cup, she found a seat near the window and sat down. Outside, people were walking quickly in the cold, but inside, everything felt slow and comfortable. Lily held her cup with both hands, enjoying the warmth. She did not feel the need to rush. She simply sat, watched the street, and allowed herself to relax. Moments like this were simple, but they helped her feel balanced again. After some time, she finished her drink, stood up, and stepped back into the cold, feeling calmer than before. A day at the office. James arrived at his office early, hoping to have a quiet start before the day became busy. He turned on his computer, arranged his papers, and began checking his emails. At first, everything was calm, but soon the office filled with people, and the noise slowly increased. Phones started ringing, conversations began, and the day moved quickly. Meetings followed one after another, and tasks continued to appear on his list. Sometimes he felt overwhelmed, but he tried to stay focused. He reminded himself to take things one step at a time. Around midday, he took a short break and stepped outside for some fresh air. That small pause helped him feel better. When he returned, he continued his work with a clearer mind. By the end of the day, he felt tired but satisfied. It had been a long day, but he had done his best, and that was enough for him. A walk through a busy street. On a bright afternoon, Daniel walked through a busy street in London, surrounded by people moving in every direction. The sound of traffic, voices, and footsteps filled the air. Shops were open, and displays in the windows caught his attention as he passed by. Some people were shopping, others were talking on their phones, and a few stood outside cafes enjoying their time. Daniel walked slowly, observing everything around him. He noticed small details, like the way people dressed, the colors of the signs, and the expressions on faces. Even though the street was crowded, everyone seemed focused on their own path. The energy of the place was strong and lively. After some time, Daniel turned into a quieter road, leaving the noise behind. The change was immediate, and he felt a sense of relief. It reminded him how different parts of the city can feel, even when they are close to each other. A quiet evening in the park. As the sun began to set, Anna walked into a nearby park to enjoy the calm evening. The sky was painted with soft colors, and the light slowly faded as the day ended. People were still there, but the park was quieter than before. Some sat on benches, while others walked slowly along the paths. Anna found a place to sit and looked around. The trees moved gently in the wind, and the sound of birds could still be heard in the distance. The busy day was over, and everything felt more relaxed. She took a deep breath and allowed herself to enjoy the moment. There was no need to hurry, no pressure to do anything. It was simply a time to rest and feel present. After sitting for a while, she stood up and walked back toward home. The night was coming, and she felt calm and peaceful, ready to end the day. A visit to the gym. After finishing work, Ryan decided to go to the gym near his home in London. He did not always feel motivated, but he knew it was important to stay active. When he entered, he could hear the sound of machines, music, and people talking quietly. Some were lifting weights, while others were running on treadmills or stretching on the floor. Ryan placed his bag in a locker and began his routine slowly. At first, his body felt tired, but after a few minutes, he started to feel more energetic. He focused on his movements and tried not to think about anything else. Around him, everyone was working on their own goals, and there was a sense of quiet determination in the room. After completing his exercises, he sat for a moment and drank some water. His muscles felt tired, but his mind felt clear. When he left the gym, he felt stronger and more relaxed. It was not always easy to come here, but every time he did, he felt proud of himself for trying. A visit to the cinema. On a Friday evening, Sophie went to the cinema to watch a new film that she had been waiting for. The building was bright and full of people, all standing in lines to buy tickets and snacks. She bought her ticket and a small box of popcorn before entering the hall. Inside, the lights were dim, and the large screen stood at the front, waiting for the film to begin. She found her seat and sat down, listening to the quiet conversations around her. When the lights turned off completely, the room became silent, and the film started. For the next 2 hours, she forgot about everything outside. She followed the story, felt the emotions of the characters, and became fully absorbed in the moment. Sometimes she laughed, and sometimes she felt a little sad, but that was part of the experience. When the film ended and the lights came back on, people slowly stood up and began to leave. Sophie walked out into the night, still thinking about the story she had just seen. It was more than just entertainment. It was a small escape from everyday life. A visit to the bank. One afternoon, Daniel needed to visit the bank to take care of some important matters. He entered the building and saw several people waiting in line. The atmosphere was quiet and formal, and everyone seemed focused on their own tasks. He took a number and sat down, waiting for his turn. While he waited, he looked around and observed the surroundings. There were desks, computers, and employees speaking politely with customers. When his number was called, he walked to the counter and greeted the staff member. He explained his request clearly and listened carefully to the instructions given to him. The process took some time, but everything was handled in an organized way. Daniel appreciated the calm and professional environment. When he finished, he thanked the staff member and left the bank. It was not an exciting visit, but it was an important one. Small responsibilities like this are part of everyday life, and completing them brings a quiet sense of satisfaction. A visit to the barber shop. On a Saturday afternoon, Alex decided it was time for a haircut. so he walked to a nearby barber shop in London. The shop was small but busy, with a few customers waiting for their turn. The sound of scissors and electric clippers filled the air. Alex greeted the barber and took a seat, watching others as they got their hair cut. When his turn came, he sat in the chair and explained how he wanted his hair. The barber listened carefully and began working with confidence and skill. As the haircut continued, Alex felt relaxed. The simple routine, the quiet conversation, and the steady movements created a calm atmosphere. When the barber finished, Alex looked in the mirror and smiled. The change was small, but it made him feel fresh and confident. He paid, thanked the barber, and stepped outside. Sometimes, even a simple haircut can make a person feel new again. A visit to the post office. Emma needed to send a package, so she went to the post office near her home. The building was not very large, but it was busy with people handling different tasks. Some were sending letters, others were collecting parcels, and a few were asking questions at the counter. Emma stood in line, holding her package and waiting patiently. When it was her turn, she stepped forward and placed the package on the counter. The staff member waited, checked the details, and asked a few simple questions. Emma answered clearly and followed the instructions. The process was straightforward, and soon her package was ready to be sent. After paying, she received a receipt and a small tracking number. She thanked the staff member and left the post office. It was a simple task, but it gave her peace of mind, knowing that her package was on its way. Everyday activities like this may seem small, but they are part of the rhythm of daily life. A visit to the beach. On a warm afternoon, Daniel decided to visit the beach just outside the city to take a break from his busy routine. As he arrived, he could hear the sound of waves gently hitting the shore. The sea stretched far into the distance, shining under the sunlight. People were walking along the sand, some talking, some playing, and others simply sitting quietly. Daniel removed his shoes and walked slowly across the soft sand, feeling it under his feet. The air smelled fresh, and the wind moved gently around him. He sat down near the water and watched the waves come and go again and again. There was something calming about that movement, something that made him forget his worries for a while. Time seemed to slow down, and he did not feel the need to rush anywhere. After spending some time there, he stood up and looked at the horizon one last time. The visit was simple, but it gave him a deep sense of peace. A visit to a clothing store. Emma walked into a clothing store in London because she needed to buy something new for an upcoming event. The store was bright, with neatly arranged clothes on shelves and hangers. Soft music played in the background, creating a relaxed atmosphere. Emma moved slowly from one section to another, touching different fabrics and looking at colors. She picked up a few items and held them against herself to see how they might look. A shop assistant approached her politely and asked if she needed help. Emma smiled and asked a few questions about sizes and styles. She then went to the changing room to try on the clothes. Inside, she looked at herself in the mirror and thought carefully about her choices. After trying a few options, she finally found something that felt right. It was not just about how it looked, but how it made her feel. She went to the counter, paid for the item, and left the store feeling satisfied. Sometimes, small decisions like this can bring quiet confidence. A visit to the doctor's pharmacy. After visiting the doctor, James walked into a nearby pharmacy to collect his medicine. The place was clean and organized, with shelves full of different products. Some people were standing in line, holding prescriptions in their hands. James waited patiently until his turn came. When he reached the counter, he handed over the paper given by the doctor. The pharmacist looked at it carefully and prepared the medicine. While waiting, James looked around and noticed how calm and quiet everything was. The pharmacist then explained how to take the medicine and gave simple instructions. James listened carefully and asked a few questions to make sure he understood everything. Once he received the medicine, he thanked the pharmacist and left. It was a simple visit, but it made him feel more in control of his health. Sometimes, small steps like this can bring comfort and reassurance. A visit to a train station at night. Late at night, Olivia arrived at a train station in London after a long day of travel. The station was not as crowded as it was during the day, but there were still a few people waiting quietly. The lights were bright, and the large space felt open and slightly echoing. She pulled her bag behind her and walked slowly toward the platform. The sound of distant trains moving on the tracks could be heard now and then. Some passengers were sitting on benches, while others stood looking at the information screens. Olivia checked her train time and found a place to sit. She felt tired, but also calm. There was something peaceful about the quiet station at night. When her train finally arrived, she stood up, picked up her bag, and walked toward it. The journey was not over yet, but she felt ready to continue. Sometimes, even in moments of tiredness, there is a quiet strength that keeps us moving forward. A simple day, a quiet thought. At the end of a normal day, Lucas sat by his window and looked outside at the city lights. Nothing special had happened that day. He had gone to work, completed his tasks, and returned home like any other day. But as he sat there, he began to think about how these simple days shape our lives. Not every day needs to be exciting or different. Sometimes, the routine itself brings stability and comfort. He thought about the small moments he had experienced, like a quiet conversation, a short walk, or a peaceful meal. These moments were easy to forget, but they were important. They gave meaning to his day in a quiet way. As he continued to sit there, he felt a sense of calm and acceptance. Life was not always about big achievements or dramatic changes. It was also about these small, steady moments that slowly build something meaningful. He closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be another day, simple and real, and that was enough. You made it to the end, and that already says something powerful about you. Think about what you just did. You stayed, you listened, you read, and most importantly, you didn't quit. That is how real progress begins. Not with perfection, not with big grammar rules, but with simple, consistent moments like this. Maybe you didn't understand every word. That's okay. Maybe you felt slow sometimes. That's okay too. Because what matters is this: your mind is changing. Your English is becoming more natural, more familiar, and more comfortable with every passage you experience. This is how fluency grows. Quietly, slowly, but strongly. So don't stop here. Come back to this video again, read again, listen again, speak along, even if your voice is not perfect. Because every time you do that, you are building something real inside you. And before you go, tell me in the comments, which passage did you feel the most, not just understand,